Well, hello, and welcome again to another edition of the MayorShow, where we talk about all the things that are going on around Rio Rancho. And let me tell you, there's never a shortage of things to do around Rio Rancho. There's never a shortage of events. But today we have as a special guest with us the city clerk, Mr. Stephen Ruger, and he is the guy that really has the ultimate control over all of the election. We've got an election coming up.
That's correct,
And
Mayor.
so you kind of oversight the elections. You make sure that the polling locations are set up.
Yes.
You make sure that people have that opportunity to come out and make sure that their voice is heard through casting their vote. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Good to be here.
And so tell us a little bit, give us an overview of some of the election process and some of the things that your office goes through just to prepare the city for an election. I imagine there's to be a lot of work there.
There is. So I'll just give a brief overview of what the Office of the City Clerk does in Rio Rancho.
Perfect.
There's really four main functions, and the most important being elections, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But we also manage all the legislative process for the city. So we manage council agendas, manage council meetings, make sure that ordinances and resolutions are being passed efficiently and correctly and accurately. We also do all the business registrations for the city. So if someone wants to do business in Rio Rancho, they do come to my office and get a registration in order which to do business. We manage all of the city's vital records. That's very important. Make sure that the public has access to public records and that we retain them as long as we need to in accordance with the state retention schedules. And then lastly, like I said, we manage the elections for the city. So that could be a special election that's called for a bond issue, or maybe a gross receipts tax issue, or it could be like what we have coming up, which is a regular election for candidates, which is also tying in a couple of special elections, which we will get to.
So so we do have some candidates running for office this year. This is we have a council districts. We have council districts 1, 4, and 6 that'll be on the ballot.
Yes.
So if you live in districts 1, 4, or 6, people need to get familiar with their candidates. And where could they find a list of the names of the people that are running?
Absolutely. So rrnm.gov is the city's website, and we have a list of all the candidates on our website. Now, we do get asked often, can I get some biographical information about the candidates? The clerk's office and the city, we do not publish that information, but there are great resources if you do searches on Google. Or any kind of web browser search, you can find information about the candidates. And also, if you'll go to the Rio Rancho Observer, there's a plethora of information about the candidates. So in those districts, we do encourage people to read up on the candidates that are running and look at their names, understand who's on there, and make a well-informed decision when you're voting for your candidate.
Now, I do want to talk about that for just a moment there. The Rio Rancho Observer, you mentioned that, is that in the last 2 editions of the Rio Rancho Observer, they have an additional section now called the Observatory. And they do some really great articles, but the last 2 weeks they've published all the ballot initiatives. They've published the names of the people that'll be running, and they, the ballot initiatives, which we're going to talk about, include a bond question, and they include 11 charter amendments.
Yes.
So as we move into that, now that's a lot of information, and those ballot questions have a lot of information behind them, and we'll touch base on that just shortly. But
Yes, sir.
since you brought up the Observer, I thought we'd point people to where there's printed information that's already out there.
Absolutely. So yes, you are correct. The Observer has the full text of the ballot. So the charter questions that you referenced, there's also a bond question. And then the candidates, those are all listed in the Observer. And beyond that, in the legal section of the Observer, you can actually see a full verbatim copy of the resolutions that you and the other members of the governing body adopted to call for the election, which also has the full text of everything that'll be on the ballot. So that is all in the Observer, ready to go. And like I said earlier, rrnm.gov, that is the perfect way to go, because we also have the entire text of the ballot on rrnm.gov.
That's great, and I'll tell you what, to the credit of staff and working hard, I can tell you that the City of Rio Rancho's website was the #1 most transparent website. And I got to tell you that city staff works really hard to make sure that the citizens of Rio Rancho have all the information they need to understand how our government operates, what we're spending money on, some of the different things. And I know that you put I know the clerk's office puts a lot of effort into making that a very transparent portal to information.
Absolutely. That's something that we're quite proud of, the amount of information that we put out on our website. And certainly, like you said, the city as a whole. It's amazing how much information you can find on the website. There's stuff that I find as clerk, I've worked for the city for 10 years, that I didn't know that's out on the website.
Yeah.
So it's a great resource. Everything you want to know about elections and some of the stuff we'll talk about later about early voting, absentee, all that information is available on our website. It's great information. We encourage anyone to go peruse that.
Now that's great, but and voting is so important. But there's a step that we need to cover before you get to the polls.
Yes.
And that's making sure your voter registration is up to date.
Absolutely.
If your voter registration is not up to date, you cannot participate in municipal elections. And the city of Rio Rancho has an extra stipulation when you come to the polls as well regarding voter ID.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how we can get registered and what's required on that voter ID side.
Yeah, so it's good that you brought that up because the deadline to register for our election is coming up. So the deadline is February 2nd, and you'll want to make sure that you get your registration in on or before that day. Otherwise, you will not be eligible to vote in our election. You'll do that through the Sandoval County Bureau of Elections. So you can go to the Sandoval County Administrative Office. It's at 1500 Idalia, and you can register there in person. But what's really cool is the Secretary of State's office is now accepting voter registrations online. So you
That's
can
awesome.
actually, look up the Secretary of State's website and you'll be able to register to vote online, which is a great tool if you can't get out of your house. If you come to City Hall, we also have applications available that you can fill out and mail back to the county. So we have that resource available as well.
That's great. And I do know there's people, some of the candidates have people working on their staff that are helping register people. I know that also I think you can get registered. Does an MVD offer voter registration as well?
Correct. If you're there doing a vehicle transaction, you can register to vote as well as MVD.
Now let's say I'm just visiting Albuquerque and I want to get registered to vote. Or I'm in some other city, but I live in Rio Rancho, and I find myself at a place where it says, you want to get registered to vote. Does it matter where you are at the time when you fill that form out?
You can fill out the form. It'll ultimately need to be returned to the Sandoval County clerk's office. So we have a very small section actually of Rio Rancho that is in Bernalillo County, and we have no registered voters there. So everyone in Rio Rancho is going to register through the Sandoval County clerk's office. So you may be able to pick up an application for voter registration from one of those sites that aren't in Rio Rancho, but ultimately it's going to need to be returned to the Sandoval County clerk's office.
Great. So we just want to make sure you get registered in the right place. Once again, Secretary of State's website.
Yep.
Find information there, online registration, which is a great step forward, great convenience. And that's what we want to do when we're creating the opportunity to vote. We want to create the opportunity for everybody to get registered and create the opportunity for everybody to vote, because transparency is key in these elections.
Absolutely.
And making sure we get a high voter turnout. And speaking of high voter turnout in elections, Steve, you seem to see this throughout municipalities, maybe even in county, state elections,
Sure.
where we just see these low voter turnout numbers. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, obviously, as somebody who manages the election process for the city of Rio Rancho, it's discouraging to see the turnout that we have. And we definitely want to do everything we can to encourage people to get more involved in voting, especially at the municipal election. Municipal elections are incredibly important. What happens day to day in your city and your local government is going to impact your life more so day to day than anything that happens at the state or federal level. We're talking about roads being in good repair. We're talking about parks looking great. We're talking about basic water and sewer services, how things are zoned in your neighborhood. All of those issues happen at the local level. So the bulk of your life is going to happen in and around your house, and you want to make sure that you have a voice in what's going on in your community, and voting in municipal elections is the best way to make that happen.
Absolutely. And when we see it, we talk about voter turnout.
Yes.
In the last mayoral election, now that's where you have a mayor and 3 city councilors running.
And a municipal judge.
And a municipal judge.
Yes.
So in those elections, you have a mayor that's canvassing the whole city. He's out there trying to get people out to vote.
Yeah.
You got the municipal judge that's out there kind of hitting every door, trying to get information out about the vote.
Yes.
And then you got 3 city councilors. In our particular case, it's 2, 3, and 5 that
Correct.
run along with the mayor and
Yes.
the judge. But this year, we only have council districts running in 1, 4, and 6, so there's nobody campaigning in districts 2, 3, and 5.
Correct. But the questions pertaining to charter and the bond issue are citywide issues. So those other districts, 3, 2, and 5, they will be able to vote in this election for those very important issues. So even though no one's coming to your door and saying vote for me, it's really important that you still get out to vote in those districts.
That's incredibly important. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Because look, when we're having when there are questions on the ballot like there are this year on March 1 is the voting date. There will be, the city council did put a bond question on the ballot that specifically pertains to roads.
Correct.
Okay, and roads, as we saw in a recent citizen survey, 91% of citizens surveyed said roads was the #1 issue that they dealt with. That was the #1 issue. They wanted to see improvement of the roads. And so what the city council did was voted to put a question on the ballot regarding a road bond question. Tell us a little bit about the road bond question. Let's kind of segue into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can certainly look up the text of the bond question, and there's a whole host of information on our website that you can see what the background is. You can actually look at the ordinance, or excuse me, the resolution calling for the road bond. And if you look at what we call an ABM, an agenda briefing memorandum, it gives a description of what the background and analysis is of that. But basically, it is a proposed mill levy increase to property tax that would have to be voter approved. So we're asking the voters to tell us if you want to increase the levy to do some certain road repairs that will make some of our major roads much better. And so it's a funding mechanism that would enable us to do some road repairs and make some of the roads better for the city. So it's a question as to whether or not the voters want to approve that or not.
Now, and I don't want to get in too deep on it, but a lot of people ask the question, well, if I vote for this or I vote against this, let's say it works. Can the money be used when it's a road bond question? Can the money be used for anything else?
No, sir. So if this got approved, the sole purpose of the bond and the increase in the property tax, the revenue that would be generated from that would only go to the debt service on the bonds issued to repair roads.
Okay, so ultimately this would go to repair and restoration and building of roads.
Yes, that's the only thing it could be used for.
Okay,
correct.
Well, great. I think a lot of people get mixed up on some of those issues, and it's good to offer a little bit of clarity. Now, there's 11 charter amendments.
Yes, sir.
Now, explain to us what the charter is. Let's talk about that. What's the relevance
Absolutely.
of the charter?
So charter, what that is, it basically, you can look at it as the Constitution of the city of Rio Rancho. So the federal government, the United States has a constitution, the state of New Mexico has a constitution, Rio Rancho has a charter, which is akin to those documents. And it was actually adopted in '92 by voters that we wanted to be what's called a home rule city. So what that means is we've adopted our own constitution, as I call it, our charter, that exempts us from certain state requirements and allows us to govern our city more directly at the local level, and allows us to have more input and the voters to have more input into how the city is operated. So since 1992, there's been occasions where something in the charter that was pertinent back in '92 no longer works. And so what we do right now, it's every 5 years, we enact a charter review committee through the governing body. Each governing body member gets to select somebody to serve on that committee. It's a citizen committee. And that committee makes some judgment calls and goes through a process of seeing if there's anything in the charter that needs to be reviewed and amended. And stemming from that, there's a process where their recommendations go to the governing body and are either rejected or approved. And there's some back and forth until both entities agree on what issues need to be addressed. Once that's finalized, we call for, in this case, a special election that we're running in conjunction with the regular election to have those questions posed to the voters and see if the voters agree or get their input on that. So there's 11 what we call propositions, and voters will be able to vote for or against on all of those. And that's where we talked earlier about doing your research. Some of them are quite lengthy, and some of them, it's not necessarily the substance that's complex or lengthy. It's just that the actual amendments take out large sections of the charter or add in new sections of the charter. So it's very important to review all those questions and see what you're voting on.
Absolutely. And to Steve's point, there are 11 amendments, so it is very lengthy, and we certainly couldn't cover it in the time that we have here today. But just to give you an example, back in 2012, there was a charter change in 2012 affecting the mayor. The mayor went from a part-time position to a full-time position. That's what the voters said.
Correct.
And then, of course, the charter committee this year said, well, because we changed that in 2012, the salary was never addressed. So this is very important because future mayors' salaries will be dictated on what happens in this particular election. Now, it won't affect current elected officials, but
Correct.
there is a salary question, and as opposed to the city council managing that question, it's been pushed back to the voters, and the voters now will have a say as to what are your elected officials going to get paid and what is their compensation going to look like. So that being said, that's an important one. How we regulate our petition process is being questioned. How the municipal judge formulates his budget is being questioned. How petitions are written is being questioned. How the governing body potentially manages potential budget deficits is being questioned here. And as you touched on, a very large and substantial change to how the ethics of the governing body is managed from the charter. And so there's some very important questions.
Incredibly important. Yes, you're absolutely correct, Mayor. And that highlights some of the major changes. And then there are a handful of others that are very important as well. There is a question about whether or not the mayor gets to Correct. So if a certain city councilor has to be absent for a meeting because of illness or whatever, then you've cut down the number of votes that we can potentially get on certain items, and you've eliminated the mayor's ability to break a tie. So Charter Review thought that that was important enough that if there is an absence by one of the councilors, that the mayor should get a vote in those circumstances, since the mayor's power to break ties have been taken away. And just to ensure that we have a good representation of the governing body when considering items.
Okay, well, let's cut to some locations.
Absolutely.
Let's cut to how do people vote and where do they vote and when do they vote. Early voting, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, well, let's start with absentee, because that's what comes up first.
Okay.
Yeah, so absentee voting begins next week, actually next Tuesday on January 26th. And so what that means is you can contact my office, and I will give the phone number. It's 891-5004, and we will mail you out an application for an absentee ballot. So you just return that application, fill it out. We'll send you out a ballot that you can consider and return to us. You do need to return that by Friday, February 26th. And that way, you need to return that on election day by 7 o'clock. That's the preference, of course, but it could also be a student ID as long as it has your photo on it. It could be a bank card issued by your bank that has your name as long as it has a photo on there. So just something that ties your picture to your name. And if you don't have a photo ID, we can give you one. So if you come to the office of the city clerk, I'll be more than happy to make you a photo ID. You just need to bring 2 proofs of who you are. So that could be a birth certificate, social security card, even a water bill, utility bill, just something that says this is who I am. If you don't have those things, you can also sign a sworn affidavit under perjury that you are who you are, and we'll issue you a photo ID and you'll be eligible to vote.
Great. So lots of ways to get that photo ID, lots of ways to work that situation out. Now, just
Absolutely.
touching on that real quick.
Yes.
Having an ID to vote.
Yeah.
When did that happen in Rio Rancho?
And see, that's a great question. So that happened in the 2012 election, and it was a charter amendment. So we have charter amendments on this election, like we've talked about. So that was the result of one of those amendments. We asked the voters, the Charter Review Committee at the time asked the voters if they wanted to require a photo ID to vote in municipal elections, and the answer was yes. The voters overwhelmingly said, yes, we want that. Now, I do want to point out, Mayor, that only pertains to City of Rio Rancho municipal elections.
Correct.
It's not a requirement to vote in state and federal elections and,
Correct.
and school elections with the school district, that sort of thing. Anything else, you wouldn't have that requirement. But for our municipal elections, you do need to bring in a photo ID.
And that's why that charter document, as you said, is so critically important.
Absolutely.
It really does. It really defines how we operate the city and what rules we have that are specific to our municipality.
It's a great
and the things
example
that
of
we want to have in our community
Yes.
that might differentiate from other governmental entities.
Absolutely.
So excellent point there. Okay.
So early voting. Let's
Early
talk
voting.
about early voting.
Okay.
So I'm very excited, Mayor. This is the first year in the city's history that we're adding a second early voting location.
Absolutely.
And it'll be at the Loma, Colorado main library. And early voting starts in my office, the office of the city clerk, on February 10th, and same thing at the Loma, Colorado library. Both locations, it'll be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And that'll go up till February 26th. So you have an opportunity to come in and vote early. Again, photo ID required because it is in person. I do want to go back a little bit. For absentee, to request a ballot, we don't need a photo ID. So that is something that I do want to stress. But anytime you vote in person, you need that photo ID. So back to Loma, Colorado library. Like I said, first time we're going to have a second early voting site, and we encourage voters to utilize that site. I have 2 of my best polling officials that are going to work down there, and they're very friendly people. And also, Lynette, our librarian, would enjoy the foot traffic at the library, encourage people to get a library card while you're there.
Absolutely. We've had Lynette on the show, and
Yes.
and she's not getting the show this year, but we do have Star Wars Day coming up at the Loma, Colorado Library too.
Yeah.
January 29th, I think it is, but don't quote me on that date.
Yeah.
But go to the Loma, Colorado Library website and look that up. Man, that has got to be one of the most active libraries that I've ever seen. Esterbone and Loma, Colorado, but I'll tell you what, they're hopping at. I'm always hearing about something going on at the libraries in Rio Rancho.
Yes.
It's amazing how active they are in that area. But it's great. You're right on that early vote site, because I remember in elections past that if somebody wanted to early vote, they had to go all the way out to City Hall.
Yes.
And that was the only early vote site there. But now that's still an early vote site.
That is still an early vote site. You can, as normal, you can still come to City Hall, vote early, but you also have the option now of going to the Loma, Colorado Library, and so we're going to enjoy that symbiotic relationship with them.
Excellent.
Yes.
That's great. So 2 early polling locations. That's progress.
Beginning February 2010th and ending February 26th.
Okay, so we've got those dates, and once again, that can all be found on the city's website.
All on the city's
I want to
website.
continue to push out that website, www.rrnm.gov/2016 election will take you right to that web page. But if you don't, just go to rrnm.gov, and right on the front there, you'll see in the list of links, top link right there, I think, is elections, 2016 elections.
That's correct. It's one of the top links. You'll see it right on the homepage. Click there. It'll take you directly to a page, and it'll give you everything you want to know about this election.
That's great. So we got the voter registration covered. We got the early vote. We got the absentee voting covered. We got the voter ID covered.
Yes.
We got early polling locations covered. Now let's talk about vote day.
Election day, yes. So a number of years ago, Rio Rancho decided to consolidate all of our voting precincts into convenience centers. We were actually, it was a previous clerk, and it was a great initiative. We were actually the first municipality, actually the first entity in the state to do that. And so we've continued that trend, and it's been very well received. So on Election Day, we will have 4 voting locations that you can go to. City Hall.
City Hall.
Meadowlark Senior Center, that's a very important voting site for that area of town. We also have Sol Rio Church at Southern and Unser,
Okay.
and then Mountain View Middle School to cover the Enchanted Hills area and the northern area of Rio Rancho. So you can go to any one of those sites, regardless of where you live in the city, on Election Day and vote. So whatever is most convenient to you.
That's great. That's great. So 4 polling locations on vote day. Once again, that was City Hall, Sol Rio Church at Southern and Unser.
Correct.
Meadowlark Senior Center, which is on Meadowlark just east of 528 on Meadowlark Road, down there on the south side of the road.
Yep.
And then Mountain View Middle School, which I believe is off Montreal Loop.
It is.
So if you go up into Enchanted Hills, up Enchanted Hills Boulevard, you make a left on Montreal Loop. It's down there on the left-hand side.
Yep, you'll run
I know
right
that
into
really
it.
well because I used to live right there.
Yes.
And my kids went to Mountain View Middle School, so I know right where that's at. So.
Absolutely, and the schools are great. We enjoy their assistance, and they're always very kind to us. I do want to mention on Election Day, the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it's very important that you get in that time frame. As long as there shouldn't be any lines, we pride ourselves on keeping our lines down, and we have some systems in place to keep the lines down. Now, I wouldn't be disappointed to see longer lines because it means that people are out voting. But as long as you're in line on Election Day by 7 o'clock, you'll be eligible to vote. So even if it's after 7 o'clock by the time you get to vote, you just need to be in line. And one of my judges at that polling location will, at 7 o'clock, say this is the last person who's in line, and no one else who shows up after that will be able to vote. But as long as you're in line by 7 o'clock on Election Day, you are all set.
Well, to the lines issue, that's I'm going to take that opportunity to kind of plug. Is it in Rio Rancho, based on voter rolls, there's about 58,000 registered voters in the city. In the last election, which was a mayoral election where we had a municipal judge and a mayor running citywide, and along with 3 city councilors, the voter turnout was just under 7,000 registered voters that came out to vote on that, which is something that seems to be more kind of a systemic problem nationwide, but it really impacts municipalities with a low voter turnout. And it's something that a lot of people really refer to as voter apathy. I mean, Steve, you've seen this. Give me kind of your feel on that as the city clerk. Like you said, this is like a challenge for you to see how many people you can get to the polls. So how does that affect your office? And what do you do to try to promote voter participation?
Correct. So I'll just say a couple things. First on that. So. You're right. I think we had a little over 6,000. So it equates to a little over 10,000 people, or not 10,000, excuse me, 10% voter turnout. And I like to put that in real numbers. So you say we have 58,000 people and we have 7,000 people who come and vote. That means that over 50,000 people registered to vote. They're registered voters, but they just, for whatever reason, chose not to vote. I like to go back to the absentee process. If you can't make it out on Election Day, request an absentee ballot by mail. Come vote early. Do whatever you can to get out there and vote. We do whatever we can. So this is a great forum to get the word out. The Mayor's Talk Show, you've talked about the Observer and our relationship with them and promoting the election, our website. We will be sending a postcard to every household mentioning the election and giving links to the website with the information and also how people can vote and what the opportunities are there. But you're right. One of the challenges that we have is state statute sets a mandatory election day. It's always the first Tuesday in March of even-numbered years. And unfortunately, if you look at this year, we have several other elections that are going on. You have a current election going on for a C&M issue, APS. You have an election the primaries are coming up in June. We have a federal election, for president in November. People are being bombarded by elections, and I recognize that it's a lot to ask people to come out and vote. But going back to it, because of the timing of our election, because we're mandated to have it on that date, I just encourage people to recognize that we're trying not to provide a hardship to them in scheduling the election at this time. It's just when we have to have it, but it still is just crucial that you get out there and vote on that day.
What I would be really excited about is, and I don't know when the last time this happened, but It would just be really exciting if we just got up over that 10,000 voter number and got over 10,000 people out to vote. That would be a really exciting benchmark.
Yes.
I want to encourage people to please come out and get involved. And the reason I'm really pushing this year is what really sets this apart from a year where there's a mayoral candidate and a judge candidate is there is nobody campaigning in districts 2, 3, and 5. And so the folks in 2, 3, and 5, there's nobody door knocking saying,
Right.
hey, come out and vote, and
Right.
vote for me.
Right.
And while you're there, vote on these other things. So we've really, my goal is to get a lot of information out, especially to those districts that don't have a person election going on this year,
Yes.
but do have issues on the ballot that it's very important that you come out, you chime in on, you weigh in on those elections.
Absolutely.
On those issues.
Yeah, and we also encourage people in those districts to, spread the word with their neighbors. It's nice to get support from the community, and you may think you're going to go out and vote, but go knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, you know about this election? It's really important that you vote.
Well,
So-
and I do it like this. I say, look, if you're going to drive to City Hall and you're going to vote, don't vote alone. Take somebody with you.
Absolutely.
Ask a friend. Say, have you voted yet? Come with me. I'm going to run down to City Hall, or I'm going to run to this early polling location, and I'm going to go vote.
Yeah.
Or on voting day, when you go, take a few people with you. Say, hey, let's all pile in the car and go vote. And so I always say, don't vote alone. Take a friend.
Absolutely. Well, and I am the clerk for Rio Rancho, but I'm also a voter in Rio Rancho, and I voted in many municipal elections, and I can attest it is a fun experience. You go in, and the poll workers usually have just a great spirit. They're great people. They're really nice people to know. And some of them over the years have actually gotten to know some of the members of the public who they see at election time and look forward to seeing them. And I, for one, would want to be one of those people where I'm greeted when I walk in the door and recognized. And it's very important issues, but we also try to make it as easy and enjoyable for the voter as possible.
Well, not to mention you get one of those cool stickers that says,
And I voted sticker. I think of that as a badge of honor.
We just get to wear that.
Absolutely.
Walk around all day. I voted.
Yes.
So absolutely. Well, Steve, I want to thank you for coming out today.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. I think we've gained a lot of information. I encourage anybody that's watching this show to please share it on your Facebook page or on link it to your YouTube channel. Get this information out. Help us get this information out to all the citizens of Rio Rancho so we can come out and make a very positive impact on the future of our city.
Yes.
Once again, Steve, thanks for coming out today, and you have a great day.
All right.
And thank you for watching another edition of the MayorShow. We look forward to talking to you the next time, and please get out and vote, and don't vote alone. Take a friend. Thanks.